Julius Caesar became one of the most important figures in Roman military history, and then, as a result, in the political affairs of the Republic. The sensation of his conquest, the popularity that he had in Rome, created a lot of resentment on the part of the conservative party in Rome, who tried to obstruct his political career by not renewing his command of the Roman legions in Gaul, and saying that if you want to run for the consulship, you need to give up your command, come back to Rome, and run for the consulship. If he were to do that, he was going to be subject to all sorts of prosecutions by his political adversaries. So he refused to do that. But instead of giving up his candidacy for the consulship, Caesar, in command of his armies, came back to Rome, substantially marching on Rome with his army and forcing the conservative senators to flee Rome. And the outcome is that Caesar becomes the sole ruler of Rome. And he's nominated dictator, then he's nominated dictator for life. The conservative party, what's left of it, decides that the only way to stop Caesar from becoming the king of Rome, overthrowing the Roman Republic, is to assassinate Caesar. That's why he's assassinated then in the famous plot led by Brutus.
Where Julius Caesar died?
I believe Julius Caesar died in the Senate.
I think that Julius Caesar was killed at Fort Imperiale.
He was killed in the city center of Rome, near the Sacra area.
Pantheon.
Is Trastevere.
Giardino degli Aranci.
Pincio Terras. San Pietro.
All right, more than archaeological evidence here, we have historical sources that we can put together and reconstruct exactly what happened. The assassination of Caesar is said to have occurred in the Roman Senate. And of course, we all know that the seat of the Roman Senate was the Roman Forum. But in the year of the assassination, the actual Curia in the Forum was under reconstruction because it had been destroyed by fire. So when the Senate was called in session, it met in a particular place that was made available in the area of the Temple of Pompey. The Curia Pompeiana was a great hall that was part of this complex that was built by Pompey in the Campus Martius. Part of this was excavated in the Largo Argentina. Because of the fact that the Senate House in the Forum was not available, and the fact that that meeting, that famous meeting of the assassination, took place in the Curia Pompeiana, that's how we know that where the assassination actually took place. And there is, in the excavations of the Largo Argentina, a section of this hall, which is where that meeting occurred and where Caesar was assassinated. Architecture of the Colosseum is specifically designed for a kind of form of entertainment, which is typically Roman, which is the gladiatorial games.
So what we see today of the Colosseum is half of the stadium is covered by floor, and are able to see underground a series of elevators and trap doors and all the different technological means that were used to enhance performances. For example, to make a gladiator come under the stadium, like to surprise the audience, or to surprise also the audience by a ferocious animal coming out of the floor in an instant.
Well, in terms of gladiatorial games, one of the things that we do have, for example, about gladiators are funerary inscriptions that tell us the name of a particular gladiator who was buried. And there's some sort of relief representation of the gladiator with a helmet and holding a sword. You also have, in Pompeii, for example, not only did they find the amphitheater, but they found the gladiatorial barracks next to the amphitheater. And in excavations, they found the weapons and the helmets and the armor that the different type of gladiators used. And in terms of gladiatorial barracks, even the Colosseum had a gladiatorial school right next to it, the Ludus Magnus, which is a sort of overlooked archaeological site next to the Colosseum, right? It's pretty dumpy, that archaeological site. It's not taken care of properly. One of the things that the owners of the schools tries to do is to preserve as much as possible his gladiators for the games. So the training sessions are, harsh and challenging and demanding, but they are well fed, they're well taken care of in the barracks. So they are fit and ready to fight. Because it is a loss to the owner of the gladiators if he has a gladiator who, dies. And if these gladiators become very successful and very popular with the crowds, the owner of the gladiators, the lanista, he will want to maintain the popularity of that particular gladiator so that he will be called back to perform in the next set of games. They would bring him money. There's a lot, in the gladiator schools, there's lots of training. They live in small cells, sort of like monk cells. In some cases, they do not have freedom of movement inside the structure. They're chained inside their cells. They're very carefully watched. They can represent a threat if they rebel to the system, because they're trained to fight, right? If they escape from the schools, they could theoretically create havoc by putting together bands of fugitives and thieves and runaway slaves and other gladiators, which is what happened with Spartacus. Graffiti in the Colosseum are preserved in areas where the gladiators used to wait for their entrance in the arena. And they represent the names of some of these gladiators who, in some cases, seem to want to leave their name before this crucial step into the arena where they may end up dying and not coming back.
I don't think that the person who recently wrote his name in the Colosseum was really aware of the gladiators writing their names. I think it was probably motivated by the same instinct, in the sense that they did to leave a trace on a very important monument. I was here, and so, but I don't think that has anything to do with art.
There's two attitudes to graffiti. Some people consider it an art form, some other people consider it vandalism. The graffiti, the random graffiti on the walls with the signature of some graffiti individual, when they're stacked up on top of each other, they can really make a street look dirty and uncared for. When you have areas where they're working on, real elaborate, thought out, planned works of art, then it adds beauty instead to a building.
It was done since the 70s with house paint, usually very cheap materials, and usually at night. And today it's become much more sophisticated. They actually are doing it in the open using scaffolding or these elevators that take you up, and which are quite expensive to hire. So I think that it has become really a more sort of sophisticated technique. And also, especially some graffiti artists use this special paint, which is a powder, and it actually mixed with water. You can paint the buildings, and it transforms pollution into salts, and it's good for the environment. So it's something that adds to the sustainability, and that is, I think, a very positive aspect, but it's obviously expensive. So I think that in general, the realization of street art and graffiti has become much more sophisticated than initially.